Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
We are going to cover the 6th chapter of your book, which is Mirror. Now this poem, Mirror, we all know what is a mirror. Mirror is something in which you can see your own reflection, in which you can see yourself. Now, we are the reflection of our parents. This is what we know, this is what we have learned, this is what we have heard, this is what we've been listening to all our lives. And at times when our parents realize that we are not how they want us to be, they get very, very irritated and they do not like that at all. Every parent has invested a lot of love, affection, efforts, emotions in us, both before we were born and after we are born. And when so much of investment is done from their end, they always want the child to be exactly up to their wishes and expectations. And when this is amiss, when this is not the case, the parents, being human beings, even they feel bad. They do not like it and they do not approve of it as well. So this poem is written in the similar manner, conveying the same message by the poetess. Now this is a free verse, meaning there is no usage of any rhyme scheme or any device. The poetess has simply poured her heart out. She simply expressed herself freely through her poem. So without wasting much time, let us start reading. She says, "They say I look a lot like my mother. I do not think this pleases her. It cannot please her. I do not blame her. But we have learned, she and I, to live in our own mirror." So the poetess says that they mean the people usually say that I look a lot like my mother. I do not think this pleases her. To please somebody means to make somebody feel happy, to make someone feel good about something. So she says that everybody says that I look a lot like my mother, but I don't think that my mother likes to hear this. It cannot please her. This cannot make her happy that I look like her. Why? Because had we been exactly like our parents, had we been exactly the way our parents wanted us to be, life would have been wonderful well. But unfortunately, that is not the case. A child can never be exactly the way the parents want them to be. And this is why she says that it cannot please her, because I do not look like my mother. Here she's not only talking about the physical appearance, but she's talking about what is inside. She's talking about every aspect of the personality. The way you think, the way you speak, the way you behave, everything is being counted here. And since the mother is not happy with the way the poetess is, that is why she says that when my mother hears that, I look like her, that I'm just like her, that does not make her happy because she knows that I am not. But I do not blame her. She says, I do not blame her. She's not wrong. I cannot say anything wrong about that. But we have learned, she and I, to live in our own mirror. She says that over a period of time, we both have learned to live in our own mirror. To live in our own mirror means we both have learned to live according to our own wishes. We have learned to live our lives the way we want to, rather than thinking about somebody else and rather than, keeping in mind the fact that you have to make the other person happy. So she says that when people tell my mother that I am like her, that does not make her happy, because she knows that it is not the case, that I am not like her, and I don't blame her as well. If she is not happy with it, then that is not her problem at all. That is not a fault at all. But now, over a period of time, both of us have learned how to live in our own mirror, how to live in our own personal space without interfering in anybody else's, ideologies and opinions. I know why I look a lot like my mother. She's put much of her into my making, after my birth as well as before. More after my birth, because before my birth I was just a nebulous wish. She says that I know why I look a lot like my mother. I know that when people say that I am like my mother, then there is a reason behind it. What is the reason? Because she has put much of her into my making. She has put much of her means that she has put in a lot of efforts in order to raise me, in order to bring me into life. If I am here today, it is entirely because of her, after my birth as well as before. So not only is she responsible for me, for what I have turned out to be after my birth, but also before my birth. More after my birth, because before my birth I was just a nebulous wish in her. Nebulous, something which is unclear. Before a child is born, a child is simply a fetus inside you. You don't know the formation of the child, you don't know anything about the behavior, the personality, the physical aspect of a child. The child is simply something which is very unclear inside you. But once the child is out after the birth, that is when the real process begins of framing the child into the way the parents want the child to be. So before the birth, there is not much that you can do. It is only after the birth that the maximum work is done. So the poet says that I know why I am like my mother, because she has put in a lot of efforts to make me what I am. Not only did she do it before my birth, but especially after my birth, because it is then when she made me the way she wanted me to. So she tried me to be, she tried that I should be as per her expectations and wishes. Then a tangible hope, and then a palpable joy. Then she'd stroke me gently through her flesh, and she'd see me in her daydreams. And she'd see me the way she wanted me to be. So she says that after I was born, before I was born, I was just a nebulous wish. This is what we've read in the last stanza. So before the birth, the poetess was somebody or someone who was just a very hazy thing for the mother. But after the poetess was born, she became a tangible hope. Tangible, something that can be touched by you. Palpable means something which is very obvious. So once the child is there in front of you, you have all the hopes. You can touch the child, you can feel the child, you can do whatever you want to do with the child, teaching all the good things, imparting all the good values, because the child is there in front of you tangibly. And a palpable joy, and I was the reason, I was the obvious reason for happiness of my mother. But when I was inside her, when I was not born, she would stroke me gently through her flesh. So when a child is not born, the child is connected to the body of the mother. The child is a part of the mother's body only. So she says that when I was not born, my mother would try to give her love to me by touching me. How? In her daydreams, through her flesh. So it was through her body that she tried to pass on all her love to me. It was in her daydreams that she would see me. So she would close her eyes and she would imagine me in her dreams. She would see me. She would see me the way she wanted to see me. And she says that before I was born, my mother would imagine me the way she wanted me to be. Okay? Before the birth of the child, you don't know how the child is going to look. So a mother can only imagine and wish for all the good and the beautiful things for the child to happen. So here the poetess has compared how things change before the birth from after the birth. She tells that before she was born, she was a nebulous wish, she was a hazy wish inside her mother. The mother could only love her, could only send her love to her through her flesh. She could only see her in her daydreams, and the mother would see her and imagine her the way she wanted her to become. But after the poetess was born, she became a very obvious, reason for her happiness. She became a hope that could be touched by the mother, and the mother had complete liberty to do whatever she wanted for the best of the child. Sometimes I would see the phantom child, and it would anger me to unreasoning hatred. I would see it in the things she would say. Why aren't you? Why can't you? Why do you always? Why do you never? And I would weep in wild frustration, weep hot and helpless, hopeless tears. Hopeless because I would recognize even then my invulnerable rival, my little enemy, what I had never been and could not hope to be and did not want to be. So, the poetess says, she says that sometimes when I look at the way my mother is unhappy with me, I think that I am some phantom child. I am some ghost child. I am somebody else altogether. Somebody my mother never wanted, She says that, and it would anger me to an unreasoning hatred. And when this thought would come to my mind, I would hate it to an unreasoning extent. I cannot even explain how much I hated this feeling and this emotion. I would see it in the things she would say. She says that I could feel her frustration from the small complaints that she had from me. She would say things like, why aren't you? Or why can't you? Why do you always? Why do you never? So what is this? These are the complaints that the mother has with the poetess. So she says that I at times used to feel very, very bad to such an extent which cannot be explained by me. And I used to feel that I am some ghost child which my mother never wanted. And I would weep in wild frustration, she says, and this feeling would make me feel so bad that I would feel frustrated. I used to get very irritated and I used to start crying. Weep hot and helpless. Hot, when the tears flow out, they are hot. So I used to weep continuously. I used to feel very helpless. I did not know what to do. I did not know how to help this situation. Hopeless tears. She says, I used to cry, but there was no hope that I had. Hopeless because I would recognize even then my invulnerable rival, my little enemy. She says the reason why I call my tears as hopeless is because I could recognize, I could feel even then that this is my small rival, this is my invulnerable rival, this is something which is against me, this is something which is opposite, which is contrary to my personality, and I cannot do anything about it. What I had never been. She says, how could I have become somebody I never was? How can I change my personality or could not hope to be? How can I become somebody or something that I don't want to become and did not want to be? So what does this mean? The poetess is simply saying that obviously she felt that her mother was very much disappointed with the way she was. The mother was very, very unhappy with the way the poetess had become. And the poetess also would feel very bad about it. She would feel very disheartened, very sad. She would cry a lot. But she could not do anything about it, because what her mother wanted was to change her. And she says that I could not change myself into somebody I don't want to become, somebody I cannot hope to become. So that is why I would feel bad, I would cry, but I had no solution to it. So you see, I looked like a lot like my mother. She stamped herself soul deep in me with things that are of hers and things that are of hers and did not want to be. Yes, I look a lot like my mother and my daughter looks a lot like me too. She says, so you see that I look a lot like my mother, that I am a lot like my mother, because she has stamped herself soul deep in me. Her soul, the soul of my mother is there inside me. It is deep down in my body, in my heart. Because the things that are of hers, I have all the things inside me which came from her. Before the birth, a child is connected to the mother. So whatever the child gets is from the mother only. So she accepts that she has all the things that belong to her mother and did not want to be. And yet, there are a lot of things that she does not want from her mother. There are so many qualities at times that we do inherit from our parents, but we feel like changing them, right? Yes, I look a lot like my mother and my daughter looks a lot like me. So she says that yes, I am a lot like my mother. Similarly, I have a daughter who is exactly like me, who also looks like me. Now, why did the poetess make a mention of her own daughter in the last stanza? Because she wishes to convey to us a concept, a phrase which is known as generation gap. A parent will never be completely satisfied with their child, no matter how old or how young they are. There is always something which the parent would expect the child to do, to become. And when the child would not give it to them, they will get disheartened. So in the last stanza and in the last 3 lines, when the poetess has mentioned about her daughter, what she wants us to know is that just the way her mother was unhappy because she was not like her, Similarly, I can understand what my mother goes through because even I have a daughter who is like me. So the same story is going to. So with this, my dear students, we come to the end of this very, very beautiful